The services represented are the Army, Navy, Air Force, the Coast Guard, and Merchant Marine. Sometimes one can spot a vet because he or she will be wearing a hat or jacket with names or symbols showing the branch of service or perhaps the unit to which they were attached.
Since getting out of the Navy, I have joined some veterans organizations, one of which is the Tin Can Sailors Association. That's a group of people who spent time on board the small fighting ships, tin cans destroyers.
Some veterans are heroes. They hold medals of valor. Other vets led more uneventful lives while they completed their military service.
What did the military do for me? It blasted me out of my small Midwestern home area.
Some veterans entered military service voluntarily.
I enlisted in the Navy. The reason I did was I grew up outside of a Army camp in Wisconsin, and I used to watch the soldiers slugging around in mud halfway up to their knees, and I decided I didn't want to sleep in a muddy foxhole.
I got into the Coast Guard sort of by mistake. I was 17 years old, and I went downtown Chicago to join the Navy. And right next to the Navy recruiting station was a Coast Guard station with a large picture of Uncle Sam pointing out to the crowd, saying, "Men of 17, we need you." So I walked in and took the papers home to my parents because they had a sign when I was 17. And that's how I got into the Coast Guard.
Being drafted was another way of entering the service.
Well, it seems so. They had a selective service board in Douglas County, Wisconsin. They said I was duly selected.
Some veterans served for an enlistment or a shorter time if they were drafted.
I was in for 4 years. The time I was in, I was planning to come out, finish up my pre-med, and go on to medical school.
Others served enough years to retire from the military.
I was in the service in the Air Force for a total of 22 years. 9 years I was on active duty, 6 years with the Air National Guard, Colorado Air National Guard, and the rest of the time I was with the Air Force Reserves.
Veterans sometimes join organizations for vets. Two of the most common are the American Legion and the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Here we see an American Legion post providing the military honors for a veteran burial service. This is a voluntary activity on the part of the members. As a community service, this VFW post places flags for various holidays and community events. A common trait for veterans organizations is that they participate in a variety of charitable activities. Everyone loves a parade, and veterans frequently are part of the marching units, cheered and applauded by the crowds. Most veterans were in the military when they were young. Now, many are mature, gray-haired, and showing signs of their age. Once in a while, we can find a vet that still fits into the uniform of 30, 40, or more years ago.
I became a POW in Greer on the 24th of April, 1951. I had got shot in the legs and I fell down. And as I was going down, I got hit by a grenade. When I woke up the following morning, I was a prisoner of war. There was a Chinese trooper standing over me with a bayonet prodding me to get up. I couldn't walk, so they dragged me down to the hill to an area where they had the other POWs that they had collected. Hershey helped to carry me for about 10 miles, but the Chinese thought I was slowing down the column, so they ordered Hershey in to throw me at the side of the road. I stayed in a ditch for about 2 days. I couldn't move, I couldn't walk, and losing a lot of blood. The Chinese didn't feed us, they didn't do anything for us, so we had plotted to escape. Lieutenant Shattuck walked on down to the Indian River like he was getting us some water, and he kept going. He finally made contact with the 1st Cavalry Division. It was about 5 or 6 tanks, I'm not sure of the number, from the 5th Cavalry Regiment of the 1st Cavalry Division. Came in, they blazed the area, and they surrounded the hut that we were in. and they took us out on stretchers and put us on the leeward side because we were still getting a lot of fire from the hills. But anyway, they came about 45 miles deep into enemy territory, and they got us and they brought us back to the 1st Cavalry headquarters, and we were rushed to the nearest hospital we can.
I went to the Air Force recruiter. I got all my tests, everything done ahead of time, and was sworn in on my 18th birthday, March 26, 1952. I was a Korean veteran just by the fact that I was in during the Korean War. At the time, women were not allowed to go overseas until they were 21, and I was only 18.
I had thought at the time perhaps I would stay in the service. If I did, I was going to go to OCS and probably go into the chaplaincy on a full basis.
Well, I've been involved in veterans activities most recently in the last 3 years. And I joined the Korean War Veterans Association, the Queen City Chapter 195 of Denver.
I got into the service because I was looking forward to serving my country in some way or shape or form, in spite of the fact that I had lost this finger on the farm. And anyhow, I got into the Navy, and December the 29th, 1943.
I chose to go in the Marine Corps. I have a lot of friends that were in the Marine Corps, and I saw the camaraderie, and that was something I wanted in my life too. There's a saying, every Marine is a rifleman first, and we always train on that every year.
The first day that I was on the squadron, went up to the squadron, and they put me on the mock tower. That was where the pilots called in to make sure that the equipment was ready so that the plane would go up. Well, it was my very first day, and I wasn't really sure about the logistics of how they did things there. And everybody left and went to coffee and left me there by myself. And I was petrified. When they came back, I thought sure I had planes up in the air that didn't have wings on them. And so I was so upset, I threw a pencil at my sergeant in charge. He could have brought me up on charges, but he married me instead.
Well, the scariest time in the service, I, of course, was very fortunate to be in the field artillery. Probably the time we entered Germany for the first time, crossed the Rhine River, because the Krauts threw everything they had at us once we were positioned in the fatherland, so to speak.
As far as I know, every enemy unit was a Chinese unit. The Chinese, I'll give them credit, they were probably good fighters for what they had. They were not equipped as well as we were. There was a Colonel Ford came up there one day, and he called as many as they could of the first 3 graders, that is sergeant on up, and asked us if any of us was interested in getting a field commission. He said he could have probably arranged a field commission, but if any of us was interested in it. And I said, well, Colonel, in all respect to your rank and all, there's got to be a catch to this. He said, well, the catch probably to you is 1 more year of enlistment. And I asked him, I said, is that 1 more year in the Far East? He says, yes, I'm sorry to say it'll be Far East. I said, in other words, you want me to sign on for a 2nd lieutenant rank, possibly, and commit myself to 1 more year of more combat. I said, I don't believe I want any part of that. I'll tell you what I'd like to have from you, the Colonel, is a honorable discharge. If you could get that for me right now, you can take everything I've got on my back, my weapons, anything I've got, and leave me standing here with no clothes on. Just give me that honorable discharge. I have a service-connected disability. Out on a hill out in front of where we were at, went out there, tried to hold a hill one night, and we got 4 hours of artillery. And I see by the Iraq War that there's a lot of friendly fire. We didn't call it friendly then, but I think half of the 4 hours of artillery was from the enemy, the Chinese, and half of it was our own, because a lot of times you'd almost have to call artillery in almost on top of you to keep the waves of Chinese coming at you. And that's the way it went.
They would not let me out of the Air Force when I got married. which a lot of women did in those days. When you got married, you got out. But when I got pregnant, it was an automatic out.
Everybody wanted to be a pilot, so the program was backed up and they were sending the students down to wash windshields and stuff like that. We decided, hey, gee, there's a shortage of navigators. So we said, let's be navigators. Now we still have 1,200 paid members in our bond group association. Average age is probably early 80s now. I'm one of the younger ones. I stayed in the inactive reserve for 10 years and then I resigned my commission because I'd come to the conclusion airplanes were dangerous and I didn't want to do that anymore. Meanwhile, I'd gone to engineering school in the GI Bill.
In 1957, when I boarded the Ajax, nobody knew anything about that, asbestosis. The surgical room is right underneath the 5-inch 38, or actually it's the bigger gun than that. But when they would go out on practice shoots, the room in which we would do surgery, fortunately we never did, would actually rain this dust. I had no idea what it was. And it took from 57 through just this past year to show up. And that's why I'm wearing this. It's a progressive disease like emphysema. It takes a while, but the ultimate end is the lungs lose the efficiency to convert the oxygen into the blood.
That brought tears to your eyes. There were 70,000 people lining the parade route. And every once in a while you'd hear somebody, and they'd all stand up for the flag, which I've noticed a lot of people don't these days. And every once in a while somebody would yell, "Thank you." And you know, I just popped the buttons right off my shirt. I was so proud. But it brings back a lot of memories anyway. Even the bad things bring back memories.
What is a veteran? A man or woman, someone who has served in the armed forces of the United States. Now they have returned to civilian life. Sometimes we can readily spot them. Most often not. They are here among us. Look around among your friends, your neighbors, your acquaintances. Check to find out if they are a veteran. And for all those unseen, unidentified veterans, we give you our thanks.